exercise 4.4. So this is very critical for your grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12 as well. Okay. So what we're going to be doing today is completing squared, and the reason why we are doing this is because we need to change our standard form, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, to a vertex form which we have been dealing with before, which is y equals a x minus h squared plus k. And the reason is, in order to draw a graph easily without having too much trouble in terms of calculation, we need a vertex point and that 1, 3, 5 pattern depending on what the a value is. In the standard form, we do not know what the vertex is just by looking at it, whereas the vertex form, we can simply know what the vertex is. So let's take a look. Now, before we move in, the one thing that you need to know and you need to make sure is that the a value in the standard form is the same as the a value in the vertex form. Okay, make sure they are the same and remember that they are the same. Okay, so before we move on to completing the square actual steps, what I need to recall is that how to find this c value in a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we are dealing with a specific case where the a value, which is the coefficient of x squared, the number in front of the x squared, is 1. Okay, nothing else, it is 1. So in order to find c, all we need to do is the middle term divided by 2, and then you square that. So 12 divided by 2 is 6, and then we square 6, 36. This is c. Okay. Now same thing goes up here. It will be 18 divided by 2, and then you square that. That will be 9 squared, so 81. And for this will be 20 divided by 2, which is 10, and then 10 squared is, squared is 100. Therefore, c is 100. c is 81. So if you want to check, you can check by factoring x squared plus 20x plus 100, x squared plus 18x plus 81, x squared minus 12x plus 36. Okay, you can factor these. You should be able to factor those, and you can figure out whether that is a perfect square, a trinomial. Okay, so the reason why we did example 1 is that it is extremely critical to be able to do these in order to complete the square. So it's a bit different. It can be a bit odd. Okay, it can be a bit odd in terms of the steps because you've never done this before. Okay, so the steps are kind of listed in example 2. Example 2 says write y equals x squared plus 6x plus 8. Now we are changing this to, which is a standard form, into the vertex form. Okay, so for now I'm going to be dealing with when the a is 1, but later on I'm going to be dealing with when a is not 1. It's pretty much the same except for one step. Okay, so let's do this one for now. So all we need to do is we need to group these two. Okay, so I want you to group these two. So as a first step, what I want you to do is y equals, put the bracket, x squared plus 6x, close bracket, and plus 8. Okay, then all we need to do is the same thing as making or finding the c value in this bracket, so that this x squared plus 6x plus whatever in the brackets become a perfect square trinomial. So we are doing that. So x squared plus 6x, remember how to find the c value? That was the middle one divided by 2, and then we square that. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? And 3 squared. Okay, now I added plus this 3 squared from nowhere, so in order to counter it, I have to subtract the same and close the brackets. Okay, now, well, I'm kind of putting step B here, step C there, and step D, so I'm putting everything in just one line. Okay, so this then becomes x squared plus 6x plus 9 minus 9 plus 8. All I need is now the first 3 terms. I don't need this negative 9. So what I do is I put this negative 9 outside the brackets. And once I do that, I get minus 9 plus 8. All I did was I just moved it outside. And when you are moving a number outside of the brackets, you have to multiply that number by whatever the number outside in the front of the brackets. What I have here is now 1, so I don't have to multiply, well, negative 9 by anything because it's going to be by itself. But if I had a number here, for example, 2, then this negative 9 will be negative 18 as it comes out of the brackets, okay? Because negative 9 times 2 will be negative 18. Anyway, so we know that this is for sure perfect squared trinomial. So what we need to do is just x squared and calculate this portion, which is minus 1. Now, easier way of doing this and finding the middle one will be this. Take a look at the middle step or middle term of the trinomial. It's plus, and you divide this by 2. So the middle one divided by 2, I get positive 3. And this is my vertex form. Okay, so this is not that hard. Okay, you just need to get used to it. Okay, so let's do one more example and see whether you can follow a bit easier in this case. Okay, if you want to give it a try on your own, then pause the video and see whether you can do this. Okay, so here again I have 1. Okay, I have 1, so we're okay. So I'm just going to cramp all these steps into 1. So y equals, then put the brackets, x squared minus 4x plus 2. Okay. Now equals then x squared minus 4x. So we're looking for the c value so that we will have a perfect trinomial, trinomial perfect squared or perfect square trinomial. So middle one divided by 2. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And we square the whole negative 2, which will be positive 4, right? So it will be positive 4 minus 4, since I added 4 from nowhere, so I have to counter it. So I subtract the same thing and then close the bracket and plus 2. Now once I have that, then x squared plus 4x plus 4. Now remember, I do not need this negative 4, right? I don't. Because all I need is these first three terms, not the subtracting 4. So take it outside. So then it will be negative 4 plus 2. Then the middle one, we know that it's a perfect square trinomial. So x, positive 4 divided by 2 is positive 2. Now it's going to be squared and then minus 2. Okay. If you are confused why this is x plus 2 squared, factor it, give it a try, see what you get. If you can get this one factored, well, you have a long way to go. Okay, so make sure you know how to factor this question. Now then, let's take a look at example 4. So example 4 is a bit more difficult, however it's not really. Okay, it's pretty much the same as example 1, example 2, and example 3, except for the fact that we have now a number in the front. So now a is not 1. So what we do is extremely simple, same method. I'm going to cramp all this into just one space here, okay? So then we do is y equals, put the brackets around the first two terms, okay? So x squared term and the x term, and positive 5 outside. Once once you do that, what you do is you factor only the numbers, okay, not the x's. Do not factor the x's. Okay, we're not factoring the x's, we are only factoring the numbers 2 and 4. Make sure the coefficient of x squared is 1, no matter what the number is. Okay, if this is 3, factor 3 out, doesn't really matter. If this is 4, factor 4 out. If it is 2, factor 2 out. Okay, so in this case I have 2, so take 2 out, then x squared plus 2x plus 5. Now rest is the same as before. So we have 2x squared plus 2x. We're making this as a perfect trinomial, perfect square trinomial. So the middle one, positive 2, divided by 2 will be positive 1. And then positive 1 squared will be positive 1. In order to counter it, we have to subtract it again, and plus 5. Now, remember, we only need the first 3. We do not need negative 1. So negative 1 has to come outside. Now, I told you to be really careful when you're taking a number outside of the brackets because of the number in the front. So, we have then minus 2 plus 5, and that's because negative 1 comes outside, but not as itself. It should be multiplied by whatever the number in the front. In this case, it's 2. So negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Okay. Then all we need to do is 2x squared, middle term is positive 2, divided by 2 will be positive 1. And at the end, we have negative 2 plus 5, which is positive 3. Okay. So this is one of, well, this is not really one of, this is how to do. Okay. Then let's take a look at example 5. So example 5, we have 3. Okay. Example 5, we have 3. So if you want to give it a try, pause the video and see whether you can do this on your own. Okay. Excuse me. So we have y equals 3. Now put the bracket around the first two terms. Okay. Plus 1. And last one is outside. Now I have 3 in front of the x squared, so I have to take that out. We're not looking for the common factor here. We are just factoring the number in front of the x squared, which is the coefficient of x squared. So it is 3. Now the x squared minus 6x plus 1. Now again, remember the number that we are factoring out, which is the coefficient of the x squared, it doesn't have to be a common factor here. Okay, it can be a different number. It can be 5, it can be 6, it can be 7, it can be 10, it can be 20, it doesn't really matter. Whatever the number you see here, you are factoring that out. Okay, so I'm going to do another example that is not a common factor. Okay, because it seems like example 4 and 5, the numbers, the coefficient of x squared is a common factor. Okay, so in this case we have now x squared minus 6x. Now this will be plus 9 because negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. We are squaring the whole thing, which becomes positive 9. Now in order to counter this positive 9, we have to subtract 9 from it. Okay. Then 3, we only need the first 3, so it becomes x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now this one comes outside, but we have 3 in the front, so we multiply 3 by negative 9, which is negative 27, now plus 1. So we know this is a perfect square trinomial, so we put the square, now put the x, the middle term negative 6, so we divide that by 2, and that becomes negative 3, so negative 3 is inside. Negative 27 plus 1 will be negative 26. So that's how we complete the square. Okay. Now for the example 6, 7, 8, and 9, I'm going to do it in the part 2 because that's more of an application section. So what I want you to do is I want you to focus on this for now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is an extra example. Okay. Where the coefficient of x squared is not really a common factor. Okay. So this is going to be a bit more tedious. Now let's say I have 2 x squared plus 5x plus 2. Okay, so we are trying to complete the squares so that this standard form becomes a vertex form. So all we need to do, the first step, put the brackets around the first two. Okay, always start from that point. Okay, then take 2 out, so it becomes 2x squared plus 5 over 2x plus 2, right? Because we are dividing everything by 2, so we have 5 over 2. Now, if you're having trouble with how I got 5 over 2, you really have to start working on your factoring again, okay? I told you numerous times that unit 3, which was factoring, is used in unit 4 and 5 and grade 11 and 12, okay? Now, the same thing, so we are trying to make this one as a common factor, so I'm going to go in this case step by step. X squared plus 5 over 2x. Now, what's coming here is 5 over 2, the middle one, divided by 2, and then we have to square that, correct? So 5 over 2 divided by 2 is 5 over 2 times 1 over 2, and that will be 5 over 4 squared, and that is 25 over 16. So we add 25 over 16. However, I just added random, well, not really random number, but 25 over 16 from nowhere. So I have to counter it. So add, subtract 25 over 16, and then plus 2 outside. Now, we only need the first 3, so we only will keep the first 3 inside of the brackets and take this one outside. Now, when it is coming out outside, it will be this times 2, so negative 25 over 16 times 2, which is negative 50 over 16 plus 2, or you can say this is 2x squared plus 5 over 2x plus 25 over 16 minus 25 over 8 plus 2. Okay, so now then we have 2x. Now we know this is a perfect square because that's what we did. That's the purpose of 25 over 16, so that these 3 become a perfect square trinomial. Now this will be the middle one divided by 2, which we already have, 5 over 4, so 5 over 4. Then we just need to calculate this portion, okay? So I'm going to put it aside. So negative 25 over 8 plus 2. In order to calculate this, we simply need to have a common denominator. So 25 over 8 plus 16 over 8. Because 2 is simply 16 over 8, or 16 over 8 is 2. And why did I change it to something over 8? Because I have 8 here. This gives me 9 over 8, well, minus, so minus 9 over 8. Therefore, the vertex is negative 5 over 4, comma, negative 9 over 8. Remember, whatever that's inside of the brackets, which is the x-coordinate of the vertex, however, the signs will be opposite, okay? Whereas the outside is the same, okay? So, this is how to complete the squares. Hopefully you understand, and we'll see you in the part 2. Bye, guys.